We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. I'm waiting for one more person who is racing up the road, I'm sure, at the speed limit. Anyway, I just want to tell you what the order is going to be here this afternoon. I have first the Office of the Inspector General. Number 2 is Maryland State Library Agency. Number 3 will be Historic St. Mary's. 4 will be Medco. 5 will be Board of Public Works. And 6 will be the Stadium Authority. So we will get started in just a couple minutes as soon as Senator Bailey comes flying in the door. we're just going to go ahead and start. Natalie, do you want to come up here? First on our agenda this afternoon is the Maryland Office of the Inspector General for Education. We have Natalie Andrade is our analyst, and Richard P. Henry, the Inspector General, is here this afternoon. So Natalie, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. I am Natalie Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the Fiscal 27 allowance for the Office of the Inspector General for Education. On page 1 of the analysis, the Fiscal 27 allowance for the agency totals $2.9 million, representing an increase of $276,000 or 10.6% compared to the Fiscal 26 working appropriation. Turning to page 2, Exhibit 1 provides an overview of agency spending by object. Salaries and fringe benefits account for $2.7 million, or approximately 93% of the total allowance. Software licenses total $54,000, or about 2%, while other contractual services and in-state travel each account for 1% of total spending. The remaining funding supports cost allocations, motor vehicles, and other operating expenses. On page 3, Exhibit 2 shows that the $276,000 increase from Fiscal 26 to Fiscal 27 is primarily driven by a net increase of $292,000 in regular personnel costs. These increases are partially offset by a net decrease of $15,000 in other operating expenses. Beginning on page 5, the key observations section discusses the agency's investigative activity. In its calendar 2025 annual report, the agency reported completing 3 administrative investigations and 1 audit. These reviews examined procurement practices, grading decisions, staffing and student safety issues, and the management of concentration and poverty grant funds. The investigations identified instances of non-compliance with state law, local policies, or guidance, and 1 additional investigation was referred for further review by the appropriate local education agency. So the agency should comment on the status of its recommendations and actions taken by MSDE and local education agencies to address the issues identified. On page 7, Exhibit 4 presents the number of investigations open and closed from calendar 2021 through 2025. In calendar 2023 and 2024, the agency closed more investigations than it opened as it worked through a backlog of cases. In calendar 2025, however, the agency opened 11 investigations and closed 5, resulting in a closure rate of 45%. So the agency should comment on the factors contributing to the decline in investigations closed in calendar 2025 and provide an update on the current backlog of open investigations. To conclude, on page 8, the Department of Legislative Services recommends concurring with the governor's allowance. And with that, this concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. I don't have any questions for you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Senator King. Good to be here with you again. So as you had mentioned, my name is Rick Henry, and I'm the Inspector General. With me here today is my Administrative Officer, Jeannie Gunthrop. So before starting, I'd like to take a moment to, again, thank Natalie for her analysis. I'm sorry? Again, I'd like to take a moment to thank Natalie for her detailed analysis and working with my office. She did a great job, and we look forward to continuing working with her in the future. Thanks again, Natalie. I know I'd mentioned that last week. Given that you have a number of other reviews today, I just wanted to highlight our work in 2025. During this reporting period, my office received 43% more complaints than the previous year. And from the start of my office, we received over 1,300% of an increase from 2002. My office has identified over $12 million in financial mismanagement just in that time period. And this equates to a taxpayer's return on investment for my office of $4.12 for every dollar spent. to ensure education accountability. Since 2020, when I started this office, my office has identified over $100 million in financial mismanagement. I have provided this committee with our response to the questions raised in our budget analysis and will be able to answer any questions that you have. Again, I thank you for your ongoing support over the years and your continued support for my budget. So with that, we're ready to answer any questions you might have.
Are you ready with questions? I'm just teasing you.
I think we could ask a couple questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So, thank you very much. You said you had, how big was the increase of complaints that you had this year compared to last?
43%. We went from 408 to 583.
Do you have the staff? And I know that there had been in the past some issues with funding for you. Is everything pretty squared away with the funding that you have and staff that you need to adequately deal with that?
Oh, as we have in the past 2 years, we've asked for additional staff. Unfortunately, that was not in this budget, our additional staff.
Okay, thank you.
So then what do we owe the increase in investigations opened?
What occurred there is that we have been delayed in the production of records by a number of school systems, or the records that have been provided were the wrong records. As I said in the past, some school systems allow us to look at all of their documents with no issues, where others will say, we need a subpoena. So then we have to
Really?
Yes. And then we have to turn around and subpoena the documents, only to find that some of the documents that are provided are wrong. So then we have to, again, re-subpoena those records. So that has been the delay. We've had a large carryover for this year, which will be closing out a number of cases early in the next coming months.
Okay. Well, I guess if you need any help with that, you need to work with us and we'll see what we can do.
Certainly.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of disturbing to think that we have that many more cases opened.
Well, again, not every complaint turns into an investigation. So
Okay.
some people are looking for help, some people are answer shopping, but we make sure that every complaint's addressed, even if it doesn't relate to our office. We'll put the person in contact with the right department or right agency.
Okay. Senator Bailey?
Thank you. Just quick, brief follow-up that we can handle this offline, but I would definitely like to hear which school systems are not being cooperative to you.
Okay.
Versus some of them that are and some that aren't, especially if those happen to be mine.
I understand.
So, thank you.
Yes. Okay, I think that does it for us.
All right,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the Maryland State Library Agency. Natalie, we've got you again, and Morgan L. Miller, the state librarian, is here. Welcome.
Hi, Senator King. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Go ahead.
Senator Bailey now. Okay. Well, good
you.
afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Madam Chair. Oh, you go first.
Natalie's going to go first.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. Again, I am Natalie Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the fiscal 27 allowance for the Maryland State Library Agency. On page 1 of the analysis, you can see that the fiscal 27 allowance totals $112.6 million, representing an increase of $2.4 million or 2.2% compared to the fiscal 26 working appropriation. Turning to page 2, the analysis discusses federal funding uncertainty in fiscal 25 related to Library Services and Technology Act grants administered by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Following federal administrative actions and subsequent litigation, the agency requested and received its full federal allocation upfront to reduce the risk of funding interruptions. Also, on page 2, the fiscal 27 budget includes the proposed fiscal 26 deficiency appropriations totaling $409,000 in general funds, primarily related to employer retirement costs and state personnel expenses. So MSLA should comment on the factors contributing to the $220,000 deficiency appropriation for Montgomery County retirement costs and whether the factors are anticipated to cause similar spending growth in the future. On page 3, Exhibit 1 provides an overview of agency spending in fiscal 2027. Public library aid accounts for $54.3 million, or 48% of the allowance. Aid for local library employee fringe benefits totals $28 million, or 25%, and the state library network accounts for $24.1 million, or 21%. Personal expenditures represent 5% of total spending, with the remaining 1% supporting other operating expenses. These costs include grants totaling $250,000 for the Baltimore City Young Readers Program, which exceeds the $200,000 annual funding mandate established under Chapters 446 and 447 of 2022, and $450,000 for the Young Readers Matching Grant Program, which also exceeds the $350,000 annual appropriation mandated under Chapters 649 and 650 of 2023. So the agency should comment on the intended use of the additional funding provided for the Baltimore City Young Readers Program and the Young Readers Matching Grant Program. Page 4 and page 5 include Exhibit 2, which outlines the major drivers of the $2.4 million increase. Key factors include the $1.5 million increase in public library aid formula funding, a $297,000 increase for regional libraries, and a net increase of $718,000 in regular personnel expenses. The allowance also reflects adjustments related to the Deaf Culture Digital Library, including the addition of 2 positions as MSLA transitions administration of the program in-house beginning fiscal 2027. At the bottom of page 5, the analysis discusses provisions in the proposed Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act of 2026 related to the retirement costs for local library employees. The fiscal 27 budget bill includes a $722,000 general fund reduction contingent on the enactment of legislation requiring local governments to share increased retirement costs. This reduction represents approximately half of the projected increase in state retirement costs from fiscal 2026 to fiscal 2027 and would be allocated proportionally across Baltimore City and counties. The Department of Legislative Services recommends shifting 100% of the fiscal 2027 increase in the state share of librarian retirement costs to local jurisdictions. On page 7, the personnel section shows that the allowance includes 2 new education program specialist positions to support the Deaf Culture Digital Library. These positions are funded within the mandated $450,000 funding level established in the statute. Beginning on page 7, the key observations section discusses performance measures. Exhibit 3 shows trends in library programs and attendance from fiscal 2021 to fiscal 2025. Both measures declined significantly during the pandemic, reached their lowest point in fiscal 2022, and began recovering in fiscal 2023. Growth continued through fiscal 2025, though at a slower rate. So the agency should comment on the factors contributing to the moderation in growth between fiscal 2024 and fiscal 2025, and describe actions to support continued increases in library engagement. On page 8, Exhibit 4 presents data on digital materials owned and accessed. While digital holdings fluctuated over the period, access increased in fiscal 2024 and remained relatively stable in fiscal 2025, suggesting sustained demand despite constraints related to pricing and local collection decisions. So the agency should comment on whether current data collection methods adequately capture shifts in user demand and unmet needs. Page 9 includes Exhibit 5, which shows changes in service utilization at the Maryland State Library for the blind and print-disabled. After significant growth through fiscal 2023, the number of patrons served and materials accessed declined in fiscal 2024 and fiscal 2025. MSLA has indicated that this reflects an expected leveling following the implementation of the books-on-demand service model rather than a reduction in access. Finally, on page 10, the analysis discusses the implementation of the Family Literacy Pilot Program. Planning activities are largely complete, and the program is expected to launch in spring 2026 at the Maryland Correctional Institute for Women. The pilot is scheduled to terminate at the end of calendar year 2028. And with that, this concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Senator Bailey, questions? Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Bailey. And thank you, Natalie, as always, for your very thoughtful analysis. Joining me today is our Chief Financial and Operating Officer, Donna Liberto. The Maryland State Library Agency ensures that all Marylanders have outstanding access to library services, spaces, and staff in every corner of the state. We achieve this by administering all of the state and federal funding for the 24 public library systems, 3 regionals, and empowering library professionals through certification and training programs, overseeing legislative and policy compliance, and facilitating collaboration across school, public, and academic libraries. We also oversee specialized programs such as the Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, the Deaf Culture Digital Library, the State Library Resource Center, the Governor's Young Readers Program, and the County Library Capital Grant Program. As Natalie pointed out, the largest component of MSLA's budget is our state aid to counties, which sees a standard increase in Governor Moore's proposed FY27 budget. Maryland's 193 public libraries are vital community hubs that provide equitable access to information, technology, and opportunity. We also have 26 bookmobiles that break down the barriers and to bring books, technology, and programs to every single member of their communities. More than 3.3 million Marylanders hold library cards, and last year they checked out over 3.5 million items. Maryland libraries saw approximately 17 million visits throughout the state, and they answered 3.5 million questions on everything from how do I help my child to be a more confident reader to how do I start a business in the state. This year, for all of us, including today, instability at the federal level has required libraries to be even more responsive to community needs. Originally this was singular, but I should say now during federal government shutdowns, people turned to libraries for support. For families managing tight budgets, free programs and borrowed materials provided essential financial relief. Furthermore, libraries have served as frontline workforce development centers, offering job search tools, resume support, career coaching, and trusted spaces that remove barriers to employment. Librarians continue to build relationships to provide customized solutions for their communities that extend beyond what we think of as traditional library services, often filling gaps that have been caused by the eroding social safety net, including everything from providing access to social workers, food pantries, health and legal resources, to tax benefits and assistance, often in partnership with local government and nonprofit entities. Libraries leverage these resources to serve the public in the most cost-effective ways possible. State funding for libraries represents 0.17% of the total state budget, but is used to serve every single person in Maryland in every corner of the state through our libraries. And state funding is critical for their success, especially given the instability and disinvestment in libraries at the federal level. Any reduction in funding will negatively impact library programs and the millions of Marylanders who rely on them. I want to thank each one of you, especially you, Senator King, who has always been our champion and has a Maryland Library Association.
I always put your bills in.
You do, including this year. Thank you. And you do it so well. You've also all maintained such an excellent, long-standing track of supporting libraries in Maryland, and I am so honored to serve as a state librarian in a state that funds, values, and celebrates its libraries. So in response to questions posed by DLS, The first being regarding Montgomery County retirement costs and the $220,000 deficiency appropriation. MSLA is responsible for administering Montgomery County state's contribution to the teachers' retirement system and the pension program for all of the professional and clerical employees at the Montgomery County Public Library System. This distribution is determined annually based on the lesser of the state's retirement contribution percentage versus Montgomery County's contribution percentage. And not surprisingly, each year that contribution rate goes up. The additional funding will ensure that MSLA is able to fully fund the Montgomery County Public Library librarian retirement. And if there are any remaining funds at the end of the year, we will revert those back to the state. The next question focuses on the additional funding provided in the FY27 budget for the Baltimore City Young Readers Program and the Young Readers Matching Grant Program. So this early literacy program provides critical access to books in the home for children ages birth through 5. This is a factor that we know is a strong determinant of future success for children, not only in school, but in life, especially for children who are growing up in low-income households with fewer access to books. The state currently mandates $200,000 for the Baltimore program and $350,000 for the statewide program. But unfortunately, the program is a victim of its success. Since our last report to the General Assembly on the program in December of 2024, enrollment across the state has risen by 41%, and we now serve over 55,000 children. This year, we had to reduce the amount of individual awards to each of the affiliates because there's simply not enough mandated funding in the program to meet the increased demand, coupled with the program that we partner with, the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, increased the cost of books by 50 cents. It significantly reduces the impact of support that we can provide to the affiliates. The proposed funding in the FY27 budget represents an additional increase of 30% across the entire program and is simply going to be used to alleviate the cost so that we can continue to support the expansion. Another question focused on a gradual return toward pre-pandemic engagement levels, specifically programming across Maryland's libraries. We've been asked to comment on the factors contributing to the reduced rate of growth in library programs and attendance from fiscal year 2024 to 2025, and to describe any actions that we're taking to encourage continual increases. So I included more data in my written testimony for you to review that gives multi-year data over what this looks like. So the years that are being referred to here, fiscal year 2024 and 2025, we reported a 15% increase in public library programs across the state and an 18% increase in attendance, which is pretty fantastic. All told, this represents Maryland libraries providing an additional 11,810 programs that saw an increased number of 33,104 attendees. This 15% growth rate is still significant. It even exceeds pre-pandemic trends, if you look at the data there, such as the 9.7% program increase that we saw between FY 2018 and 2019. The dramatic increases that were observed from FY 22 to FY 23, which include a 70% increase in programs and an 83% spike in attendance, were post-pandemic anomalies due to the rapid restoration of librarian services and hours. Sustaining that level of growth, while I would love to try it, it would be mathematically impossible. And without a major influx of state and local revenue, I dare say we couldn't do it, and probably even our communities would be sick of us at that point. These figures highlight the resourcefulness of Maryland's libraries. Despite relatively flat population growth, limited increases in budget and in staffing, libraries have successfully met the demands in their communities for high-quality, responsive programs. Furthermore, we've seen many library systems optimize program frequency and format to maximize this impact, resulting in fewer programs with higher attendance. A statistic that's not fully captured in the data that we provide to the state and the federal government, but that I'd like to find a way to incorporate in the future, pertains to the proliferation of outreach programs. So programs held on bookmobiles or in community centers or at other partner agencies to take the library outside of its four walls. While the type and quantity of library programs offered is decided at the local level, MSLA supports public library systems with a wealth of resources to promote library activities that are of high quality and aligned with their local community's need. We facilitate a number of statewide programming interest groups. We lead statewide programming initiatives such as Maryland Libraries Together, the statewide Summer Reading and Learning Program, and Career Success Month, which is taking place right now. We also administer our federal grants to support the development of programs and initiatives that are customized by local libraries. Another question focuses on digital materials and whether current data collection methods allow for adequate assessment of shifts in user demand, and to discuss whether our agency tracks information on unmet demand for digital materials and resources. And so there are a number of ways to answer this question. We regularly review statewide data and collection methods, not only for digital, but all sorts of other material circulations to accurately monitor usage trends, but at a high level. And we also convene and meet frequently with state library leaders to provide their input and to understand how we can best support these trends. More specific information on what people are demanding and the shifts that are being seen, particularly when it comes to specific materials and resources, is managed and decided at the local level, where it should be. The reallocation of resources to meet changing needs within fixed budget remains at the discretion of each of the county library systems. But to answer this question more broadly, unmet demand for digital materials is less likely a factor of collection development issues and much more the result of unfair pricing conditions inflicted on libraries in the ebook market by publishers, which makes it very challenging for us to fully meet digital demand due to affordability. For example, a single ebook license for a book could cost at least 4 times more than a print copy, and we're not able to circulate it nearly as many times. And I know you remember that, Senator King, from our last attempt at legislation in this area. And hopefully in the future, we'll consider something more. Another question regards the shifting of 100% of the FY27 increase in the state share of librarian retirement costs to local jurisdictions. And with this, we respectfully disagree with the recommendation. Shifting the full cost of the 2027 pension increase will do very little to resolve the state's budget deficit, but it will have a very negative impact on the availability of county funding for libraries in the communities that they serve. In multiple counties, it is likely that these costs are going to be passed on to the library system itself, which undermines the impact of any state increase they'll receive this year. County library leaders, and I speak with them every day, do understand the fiscal challenges facing the state, and they are willing to do their part to help close that gap. But that part needs to be equitable. I want to point out that local libraries receive significantly less state funding to meet their operating budget needs than our other education counterparts. K-12 and higher ed, which receive approximately 40% and 26% of their operating funding from the state. Yet library buildings are open more hours than schools. Some of our largest libraries in the state see thousands of people in a single day, and they do that every day. And furthermore, library staffing levels are a fraction of the personnel that are employed by public schools and higher education, resulting in much lower pension costs. And I'm not complaining. I am bragging because I am very proud of how resourceful librarians are and what outstanding financial stewards of the tax dollars they're committed to being. But at a time when local operating budgets are already stressed, and I'm already hearing that several library systems are anticipating flat or reduced funding locally, shifting these pension costs creates undue hardship for them. So thank you again, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I am more concerned about what happens next year and the next year. And not that I'm trying to tell you what to do, but I wouldn't give in too quick. Just because if you take a cut this year, then what happens next year? So it's a conversation that we have to have on the whole picture to make sure that we don't lose good programs like this. We've got a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Senator King.
Yeah,
And hopefully
it's going to be a very challenging session, I think, and we have the budget first, to see how we hang on to the programs that we hold so dear. That's our big challenge. And that for not only for this year, but they're saying next year and the next year are going to be worse. So we've got to really balance it and make sure that we hold on to the best of what we have.
Yes.
You know, I can just remember years ago, not that long really, when technology was taking over and we were figuring there's really not going to be a whole lot of use for libraries because, you know, we've got computers and all that kind of thing. Well, I think there's as much or more use for libraries now than there was even then. So I'm just happy that you all do what you do.
Thank you so much, Senator King. And thank you for the hard work that you do that allows us to continue to do that. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, there may be a proliferation of technology, absolutely. Back when I was starting in libraries, people first had access to the internet for the first time. Now they're coming to us to learn AI. So somebody in the community, a trusted person in the community, needs to be there to not only help people access it, but learn how to access it wisely.
Responsibly.
Responsibly, yes. Thank you.
Senator Bailey, questions, comments?
All good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next we have the Historic St. Mary's City Commission. Catherine Barber is our analyst, and we have Vice Admiral Tim Healy with us. And you brought an entourage with you today.
Good afternoon, Senator King.
Good afternoon.
My name's Peter Carocchio. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Historic St. Mary's City. I'll be sitting in for Admiral Healy today. He is still snowed in
Man,
down
okay.
in southern
He's got a good
Maryland.
excuse then.
He does.
That
He
gives
does.
Senator Bailey his excuse for being a little bit late because he probably was snowed in too. Correct?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair King. My name's Catherine Barber, and today I'll be presenting the DLS budget analysis for Historic St. Mary's City Commission. For some context, Historic St. Mary's City is a nearly 1,000-acre outdoor history and archaeology museum on the site of Maryland's first colonial capital. The museum's fiscal 27 allowance totals $7.1 million, which is an increase of about $291,000 or 4.3% from fiscal 26. I want to start with a quick update about the impact of federal rescissions on museum operations. 2 federal grants were rescinded in April 2025, one from the National Endowment for the Humanities, or NEH, and the other from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, IMLS. The NEH grant funded the installation of 3 interactive exhibits in the Maryland Heritage Interpretive Center, which will serve as the new visitor center. At the time of the rescission, the museum had spent about $76,000 of the $315,000 grant amount. Historic St. Mary's City was able to partially repeal the rescission, which brought the total amount received to $171,000 and the amount lost to roughly $144,000. The museum was able to cover the remaining difference with contingency funds. The second grant, which was from IMLS, was $229,000 and was designated for assessing the condition and restoration needs of artifacts recovered from the 19th century home of enslaved individuals. The museum was able to recover the full grant amount. Moving on to the rest of the budget, looking at Exhibit 1 on page 3, you'll see a breakdown of the $7.1 million allowance. Maintenance operations, public and educational programming, administrative expenses, and research archaeology each make up a little less than a quarter of the spending at about $1.6 million each. The major changes from fiscal 26 to 27 are shown in Exhibit 2 on page 4. Most of the increase is due to personnel costs, while the largest decreases are due to abolished contractual positions and the NEH grant rescission. There's more detail on the personnel changes on page 5. The fiscal 27 allowance includes 8 contractual conversions for a total of 40 positions. Most of those conversions are in the research and archaeology department. The abolished positions, totaling 11.5 contractual positions, include seasonal staff as well as those now converted positions. Historic St. Mary's City did not have any reported vacancies and was exempt from the executive hiring freeze. The key observations section begins at the bottom of page 5 with a discussion of general admissions, which declined by 4.4% in fiscal '25, driven by a drop in event admissions. As you can see from Exhibit 3 on page 6, overall admissions for fiscal '25 totaled nearly 35,000, which is a 35% drop from the 5-year high in fiscal '22 of nearly 54,000. Historic St. Mary's City indicated that the opening of a new restaurant and its new visitor center will improve admissions. Turning to page 7, Exhibit 4 breaks out the Commission's special fund revenues, which increased slightly due to foundation support in fiscal '25 for mold remediation efforts. Earned revenue, which includes ticket sales, leases, and donations, increased slightly from $543,000 in fiscal '24 to $545,000 in fiscal '25. Historic St. Mary's City Commission should provide an update on its efforts to secure non-state sources of revenue. The last item in the key observations section regards an April 2025 fiscal compliance audit in which the Office of Legislative Audits reported one finding about the Commission's relationship with its affiliated foundation and the policies surrounding that agreement. OLA highlighted the absence of clear procedures around procurement, conflicts of interest, investment policy, and fund transfers. The Commission responded that it has since added language to its memorandum of agreement to address the audit's findings and recommendations, and OLA determined these corrective actions were sufficient. You can find DLS's recommended action on page 9. DLS concurs with the governor's allowance, and that concludes my presentation. I can take any questions now.
Thank you, good job. Senator Bailey?
I do have one question, and thank you very much for your work. One of the things that has been such a struggle is to get Historic St. Mary's open 12 months of the year. That's a big incentive, and it would work. It's really good, the amount of school children that go there, and it's great to have, all the interaction that we have with all the different school systems. But for, May, June, July, and August, right, schools aren't going down there, right? And Historic is closed in the winter, where we could, now that we have this interactive center is going to be open, it would be much better to have that in the winter. And I see that that was not something that you were supporting, was opening in the winter. And I am just curious about that.
I don't believe I made any recommendation either way on their hours, but I think that they can probably speak to the benefits of that. I think that DLS is all for supporting their revenue efforts in any way and finding new sources of revenue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Vice Admiral Tim Healy.
I'll fill in for Vice Admiral Tim Healy. Thank you, Madam
There you go.
Chair.
Thank you.
Chairwoman. And we'd just like to say thank you to Ms. Barber. You've been great to work with. I speak on behalf of all of us. You're a true professional, and you've been wonderful working through this with us, so thank you. And thank you, Madam Chairwoman, committee members, and Senator Bailey, always great to see you. Thank you for being here, and distinguished guests, for the opportunity to testify on the proposed FY 2027 operating budget of the Historic St. Mary's City Commission. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Peter Carocchio, and it is my pleasure to serve as the Chief Operating Officer at HSMC. I'm supported today by members of the HSMC leadership team, along with the museum's newly minted Executive Director, Mr. David O'Donnell. So welcome. And I also have here with me Mr. Mike Bellis at the end here. He is our Director of Advancement and Communications. Mr. Joe Kangas, our Director of Facilities, Grounds, and Maintenance. And over here I have Mr. Douglas Hunter, who is our Director of Finance. I would like to begin by thanking the Office of Governor Moore and the Department of Budget and Management for their support as expressed in their FY 2027 budget recommendations. The Historic St. Mary's City Commission recognizes the fiscal headwinds facing the state. We concur with the legislative budget analysis. we are especially appreciative of the recommendations to reverse cuts made to the Commission's operating budget and to convert 8 contractual positions to PIN positions. Budget reductions have required the museum to leave mission-critical contractual positions unfilled. The reversal of these measures will greatly improve the institution's ability to conduct research, maintain its land and buildings, and communicate with public in alignment with its mission. The conversion of positions the museum considers permanent allows us to reward and retain talented staff members who have been with us for more than 2 years. For those less familiar with our agency, the Historic St. Mary's City Commission was established 60 years ago with the mission to study, preserve, and interpret the history of St. Mary's City, Maryland's first colonial capital, to the public. And since its inception, the Commission has worked towards this mission by managing the St. Mary's City National Historic Landmark District, protecting its natural and cultural resources, unearthing new information through an internationally recognized archaeological research program, and communicating our state's rich history to generations of visitors. HSMC's 835 acres hold stories of the past dating back to more than 10,000 years of human life, with every subsequent period of human history represented in its archaeology, historical documents, and standing buildings. Today, the Commission and the state of Maryland stand before an unprecedented opportunity. In 2034, just 8 short years from now, the state will commemorate the 400th anniversary of its founding. This watershed moment should unite all Marylanders in honoring the stories that make our state unique, stories of triumph, tragedy, and the construction of the inalienable rights that we enjoy as Americans. Maryland's story is America's story, and it's high time our state's history took its well-deserved place in the national conversation. But the 400th anniversary is about more than a push for recognition. The economics make too much sense to ignore. For example, the state of Virginia invested $49.5 million preparing for the 2019, the 400th anniversary of both the arrival of the first Africans and the gathering of the first representative assembly in English North America. After years of planning and successful statewide rollout, the state recorded nearly $200 million in total economic impact, including more than $100 million impact made by 2.7 million visitors to commemorative sites, events, and programs. Simply put, heritage tourism generates jobs, drives revenue, and has long-lasting impacts. In anticipation of 2034, and in recognition of the importance of growing non-state funds, HSMC is currently instigating a number of revenue-producing initiatives. Farthing's Ordinary and Kitchen, shuttered for the last 2 years, is primed to reopen in March as Angelica's Kitchen. This restaurant brings HSMC commercial lease revenue and provides an essential food service option to attract and retain museum visitors. We are also in the final stages of implementing Blackbaud Alltrue, a comprehensive digital constituent management database that will permit smoother ticket purchasing, online sales, donor and volunteer management, and wealth screening. This tool is a major step towards modernizing HSMC's approach to donor cultivation and visitor engagement. The museum is also kickstarting new fee structures in its tours, adding new programs, and investigating several new to us opportunities for visitor engagement, such as a corn maze, a pick-your-own pumpkin patch, and spaces for RV parking. Finally, starting in March, the museum will be increasing its ticket prices for the first time in nearly a decade. The latter move coincides with the opening of our new visitor center, the agency's largest capital program in years. We are confident that the exhibits in this facility represent one of the most comprehensive, modern, and collaborative tellings of Maryland history in a public institution. We invite you all to join us in July for the Visitor Center's grand opening, and a formal invitation will follow. Before I conclude, I would like to offer thanks in one more direction. Like many state agencies, HSMC faces the burden of deferred maintenance. Recently, this has resulted in necessary mold remediation in facilities across the museum's campus. We are grateful to our colleagues in the Department of General Services for their essential support in confronting these issues. The challenges facing the state are not lost on HSMC, and we are grateful for the support our agency has received in these difficult times. Despite the immediacy of budget shortfalls, I urge you to maintain an eye on 2034 and the unique opportunity the state's 400th anniversary presents. At HSMC, we know that 2026 is going to be a great year. With new revenue-generating tools and programs, new digital avenues for maintaining donor and visitor engagement, and the grand opening of a flagship exhibition of Maryland's diverse history, we are primed for exciting times ahead. We look forward to sharing them with you. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, every time St. Mary's comes before us, I think about those. Probably was one of the most favorite field trips I went on with my kids when they were in elementary school, and both times it was just such a neat trip, and the kids still remember it. So
It's so good to hear. Thank you.
Every kid should get a chance to do that.
Thank you, Senator. It's great to hear. It's great to get that feedback.
Senator Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following up what the chair just talked about, what are we doing to increase, to get kids and other school systems back engaged? Because I know that after the pandemic, it's fallen off, and you know, now all of a sudden we've got school systems saying, hey, we've got to test more, so we've got to take that away. Well, that's something that maybe this committee, we can work on about that, but we'd like to get back to where we're sending kids, you know, down to you, and I'd like to know how you're going to make them feel welcome and accessible.
Thank you, Senator. Great question. I appreciate it. We are being proactive. We are going out to schools, not only in St. Mary's County, but Prince George's, Montgomery, all the way out to Western Maryland. And we have a program called the Mother Goose program. And that is, we bring our interpreters to the schools, and we sit down. We have one of our interpreters dressed up as Mother Goose, and she reads to the children and it teaches the history of Maryland. And that has been going very well. We have already initiated it, and it's going on in St. Mary's County as we speak. And we've also taken a proactive approach with Mr. Bellis here on our left. He's directing our advancement, and we are actively seeking donors throughout the state to come visit historic St. Mary's City and to learn about all the great things that Maryland has to offer. We've also increased our membership to our 1634 Society, which has doubled over the last 6 months, due in large part to our advancement and communications department and the team that they have in bringing more people to the museum. But again, focusing on the school kids, we determined it costs $80 per student to come visit our school because of the bus transportation, getting the chaperones, all of the things involved today that pre-COVID, we didn't have those issues. We have them now. Go ahead, please.
And I will just add,
Yeah, I've got you on my list here. You can go right ahead
I'm currently in day 2 as being the executive director. So
and you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Well, I let these folks take care, but I share your concerns, and there's certainly things that we want to work on. Being open 12 months now with the visitor center and having those opportunities, and also going out into other counties and identifying local donors to help offset some of that $80 per student cost to bring students back. That's something, that I'm passionate about. I'm hoping that by day 4, we can have an answer for you.
Well, if you,
I appreciate it welcome, and we're looking forward to it. I know that you've started this program on researching and looking for donors before just day 4, so we can follow this up offline. but
absolutely.
I would be very interested in knowing the progress of that and how that's gone over the last few months, and seeing how that's if what we're doing is working.
Absolutely, but.
Great. Senator King and Senator Bailey, if I may, 2 other initiatives. We are now offering public sales. We started that in the fall of 2025. Basically, you get 20 of your best friends, come down, and Captain Angela will take you for a beautiful sail with her crew.
Oh, how nice.
Aboard the Maryland Dove, which is just wonderful. And we've also, we'll be opening up Angelica's Kitchen in March, which we expect to attract many people to our grounds because they also have a microbrewery, and they'll be brewing their own
Is that
beer.
the reason that you feel that the numbers were down, was not having a restaurant?
Absolutely.
Really?
We found that take your average couple with 2 children coming to our museum. They get there, they unload the car, they come into our museum,
Nowhere
they
to
buy the
eat.
tickets. There's nowhere to eat. The kids get cranky. You've got to give them some chicken tenders or something.
Yeah.
And when they leave, they got to put them back in the car seat. And we all know, all of us who have had children, that's quite an effort. And they don't come back. They go up to St. James Deli or wherever it's close by and get their kids something, but they don't return. So to really benefit Historic St. Mary City, it's a minimum of 4-hour stay. And if you're a historian or a history buff like myself, it's easily 8 hours.
Okay. Thank you very much. You good? Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, next we have Maryland Economic Development Corporation. Elizabeth Weibel is our analyst. And Tom Sadowski, Chief Executive Officer, is here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be presenting the DLS analysis for the Maryland Economic Development Corporation, or MEDCO. This is a non-budgeted economic development entity that can issue bonds and own and develop properties. Generally speaking, MEDCO's projects are divided into operating and non-operating projects. The operating where MEDCO is involved in management, and non-operating where MEDCO serves as an arm's length financing entity. On page 5 in Exhibit 1, you'll see the net assets, which are divided into operating and non-operating projects. There's not a lot of change in this from year to year. The operating projects typically have a net asset deficit, but the net operating income is positive overall. On pages 6 and 7 in Exhibit 2, you'll see income and loss by project. The net income increased in fiscal '25 to about $30 million. There's just a couple of projects I wanted to highlight on page 7. The Elkton Sports Park Complex began construction in fiscal 2025. MEDCO issued $54 million worth of bonds on behalf of the town of Elkton to finance acquisition and construction on that project. UMCP Energy was a utility infrastructure program at the University of Maryland College Park. That project was sold in fiscal 2025, and its assets were transferred to an LLC. The Chesapeake Bay and Conference Center reported a $1 million loss in fiscal 2025 after accounting for depreciation. That project does have sufficient revenue to cover its operating expenses and some of its interest payments, but has not been able to pay its debt obligations. And bondholders have repeatedly extended forbearance for those debt payments. On page 9, Exhibit 3 shows the debt coverage ratio and outstanding balance for the student housing projects that MEDCO operates. All of these are meeting the required ratio of income to debt payments. Bonds were issued in fiscal 2025 for 2 new projects under construction, Leonardtown Student Housing at College Park and Harper Tubman at Morgan State. One project at the University of Maryland, Baltimore had been under watch status for several years for not meeting the required debt coverage ratio, and that was sold in fiscal 2025 to a private company. Moving to the issues section, starting on page 10. While MEDCO itself is a non-budgeted agency, funding may be provided in other agencies' operating budgets for specific programs or projects. In fiscal 2027, there's $23.5 million in total for Medco projects, 16 million of that in the operating budget and 7.5 million in the capital budget. On the operating side, there's level funding in Commerce's budget for 2 programs, the Strategic Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund, which receives $10 million. That started in fiscal 2026, and the first round of loans is expected to be issued before the end of fiscal 26. Then the Certified Sites or Business Ready Sites program, that is also a new program that began in this fiscal year that receives $3.5 million and provides site improvement grants as well as smaller site evaluation grants. Medco has already awarded $3.2 million of the $3.5 million appropriation from fiscal 26, and you can see a list of grantees in Appendix 2. There's also $2.5 million in new funding, also in the Department of Commerce budget, to support debt service for a planned relocation of Prieto Batteries corporate headquarters to Maryland. And then in the capital budget, there's $7.5 million for a planned calcine clay manufacturing facility in Cecil County. This will be served by the Principio Rail Line project, which Medco received funding for in fiscal 25 and 26. Last year's budget bills included more than $63 million in funding earmarked for Medco if you look at both the fiscal 26 and 2025 deficiency appropriations. Exhibit 4 on page 11 shows an overview of what that funding was for. There are several new projects that I have updates for on the next couple of pages. The largest project was the Trade Point Atlantic Terminal. Medco received $38 million total for dredging operations at the project site, and that work is expected to start early this year. Viva White Oak is a mixed-use development in Montgomery County. This received $6 million in GO bond funding in fiscal 26, and that will support site work for residential roads. Turning to issue 2 on page 13, in the last year's BRFA, Medco was named one of the successor organizations to the Maryland Thoroughbred Racetrack Operating Authority. The Maryland Stadium Authority took over construction at Pimlico and plans for a training facility, while Medco assumed responsibility for ongoing racing operations and community development projects. Medco is currently leading development of 12 acres of state-owned property around Pimlico. They issued an initial request for information to get broad ideas for development and expect to issue a more detailed request for proposals later on in 2026. Medco is also now the parent entity for the Maryland Jockey Club, which handles contracts for day-to-day racing operations. An audit of the racetrack operating authority that came out after it had shut down found some issues with that authority's oversight of the Maryland Jockey Club, as well as its procurement and oversight of consulting contracts. So now that Medco has taken over some of those responsibilities, DLS has asked Medco to discuss what steps it is taking to avoid similar contract issues that were identified in the audit. That concludes my presentation. I can take any questions.
Good job. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Sadowski.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, Senators Bailey and Senator Gazone. Thank you very much for the opportunity today. For record, my name again is Tom Sadowski, Executive Director of the Maryland Economic Development Corporation, MEDCO for short. And with me today are my 2 very trusted sidekicks, Candace Dotson-Reed, our Chief of Staff and Executive Vice President, and Jim Miller, our CFO, who's done a great job for many 20 years now at MEDCO. Never anything other than a clean audit and clean books. So Jim does a great job for us. I also want to thank Elizabeth, too, from DLS. She does a great job going through our reports, our records, and financial performance. She's always a great partner to work with this fiscal years and past. We have provided some detailed testimony, but I did want to take a few moments to hit some highlights, if I could. MEDCO has arguably had its best year ever in fiscal 26. We did over $1 billion in project revenue bond financing statewide. Nearly $50 million of that money went towards engaging minority enterprise, and over $520 million resulted in what we like to call equity impact across the state, where we're investing, who we're investing with, who we're partnering with, which communities, et cetera. Our portfolio is significantly stronger, as Elizabeth had pointed out. I think this is the first time all of our student housing projects have achieved positive financial performance, so we're very proud of that. Our revenues have increased as a result of the fees that we garner for the various work that we do for public and private partners, and that's allowed us to hire new staff and keep up with ever-increasing workflows. Our partnerships with the Maryland Department of Transportation, Department of Commerce, they've never been more robust, and they've led to exponential growth in terms of new transit-oriented development activity, community development projects, and new and expanding employer projects. So we're very proud of the work that we're doing with them. All of this has translated into record project pipeline activity. We're now looking at more than $11 billion in potential new investment from these new projects coming in. So we're very proud of that work that we're doing with our state partners. Our work with our federal agency partners has grown as well, with strategic partnerships inked recently with the Army Research Lab and NASA Goddard. Further, Medco is engaged in at least 3 major projects that will help to sustain and enhance significant Maryland-based research missions and grow high-value job opportunities for Maryland residents. Over this past fiscal year, as Elizabeth had pointed out, Medco was entrusted with state funding to launch 2 new economic development programs. One, the Business Ready Sites Program, and the other, the Strategic Infrastructure Revolving Loan Program. These resources were deployed and are being deployed as intended, at minimal cost and with tremendously positive return. The $3 million in grants that we've issued through the Business Ready Sites Program, for instance, is going to return initially or immediately $50 million in terms of construction investment. That's a 16-to-1 ratio. At total build-out, these new projects project to garner as much as $1.2 billion in new investment. That's a 300-to-1 return ratio. So Medco prides itself on being good stewards of state resources. Finally, all of this engagement with our public and private sector partners has led us to realize the enormity of need for our services and the opportunity before us to catalyze new investment, community improvement, and high-paying job creation. As Candace and I often like to say, let's see the opportunity amidst the challenges. There's certainly a number of challenges out there, but we think there's equally an inordinate amount of opportunity. So as a result, we've worked with Governor Moore's staff in conceiving and launching the new Maryland Center for Public-Private Partnerships at Medco. It's basically a recognition of the work that we've done over the years, but we're packaging it in such a way so that we can be of help to our municipal, local, state partners out there that are conceiving of projects that are really facing challenges from a financial perspective. If we can engage in a innovative and entrepreneurial way that helps to bring in private capital, maybe these projects can see reality and start generating positive tax revenue generation for the state of Maryland. So with that, I mean, we're going to continue the good work that we do. We appreciate your consideration. And look, our whole mission is to make Maryland's economy the most resilient, innovative, and competitively dominant for its size in the country. So thank you again very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Senator Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate everything you all do, and I've gotten to get more familiar with you as time has gone on, but I am curious with defense being one of our largest drivers in the state now. I am curious to know when we're talking economic development, especially, you know, it is the largest in Southern Maryland.
Yes.
And how much involvement you're having with the defense contractors in across the state?
A great deal. I mean, to be perfectly blunt, a great deal of conversation with them. A lot of conversations with a lot of the installations. They have new mission funding that they're pursuing. There have been cutbacks in certain respects. We've been working with garrison commanders on how to best utilize underutilized real estate and help improve infrastructure. But a lot of this requires coordination with a lot of defense-related industry. So there are a lot of very interesting, part of those 3 projects I mentioned, they all come with tremendous research enterprise funding along with it. So we're looking for ways where we can come in, make improvements to maybe federally owned property so that we can bring in more defense-related industry to help complete that work. Because the last thing we want is for those missions already here in Maryland not to be recognized or utilized in the way that they should be. St. Mary's is a great example. We're having a lot of fun working with St. Mary's County on the airport down there, trying to make physical improvements to that facility, putting up new skiffs, and hopefully building some new hangars there at the airport.
I appreciate that and what you're doing, and I just think that that's, I see the federal investment
Yes.
in St. Mary's, but I see, the defense contractors outside of the airport, and I know that they are very interested to work more, but in Maryland, we seem sometimes we're not as all connected. So if we can work and help you with that, we'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. We're
Thank
good.
you so much.
Okay, next on the agenda here, we've got the Board of Public Works. Andrew Gray. Hello. And John Gontram, the Executive Secretary, is with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll now present the Board of Public Works Fiscal 2027 Operating Budget Analysis. On the bottom of page 1, you see there that the budget increases $5.4 million, or 16.1%, to $38.9 million in fiscal 2027. Direct your attention now to pages 3, 4, and 5, which reflect information about the legislative grants over the last couple of years. So all the fiscal 24 funding has been allocated. The fiscal 2025 funding, there's $2 million remaining from for the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. So this funding was originally allocated to Prince George's County, but then reallocated in last year's budget to all counties. So that funding has not been completely used. And then for fiscal 2026, all the funding has been awarded, and some of the money is still being distributed in quarterly payments. Then the proposed deficiency for fiscal 2026 on the top of page 6. So the Board of Public Works has fiscal 2026 personnel deficiencies totaling $36,008 in general funds, which include shortfalls related to lower than expected vacancy savings. And it also has a combined deficiency appropriation that reduces $1.5 million in general funds and increases the special fund appropriation by the same amount. This is coming from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. So this is a fund swap that allows for sort of the governor's budget plan. So you'll see this actually occurs also for fiscal 2027. We'll talk about it in a little bit in a moment. And this funding is for the Chesapeake Conservation and Climate Corps program. So it's just switching from general funds to special funds. The overview of agency spending is reflected on page 7. So this Exhibit 2 reflects around 94% of the Board of Public Works operating budget is comprised of grants, payments to erroneously confined individuals, and also the contingent fund. So very small portion is the actual personnel complement. And in terms of the proposed budget on page 8, Exhibit 3 reflects that there's relatively little going on the personnel expenses side of things. The major changes are going on in terms of the other changes. The City of Baltimore's computer-aided dispatch system is a grant from Board of Public Works to Baltimore City for $8 million, and there's going to be a recommendation on that on the next page. There are some other changes that are kind of just reflecting year-to-year kind of changes in miscellaneous grants, or the legislative grants, and also the funding that goes to the payments of judgments against the state. So the BRFA provision we'll talk about quickly on page 9 is that fiscal 2026 provision that's also carried in fiscal 2027, switching general funds for Strategic Energy Investment Funds, special funds for the Chesapeake Conservation and Climate Corps. And then next item there on page 9 is the computer-aided dispatch system. So the system looks like it costs around $15 million. This is a significant cost. The state would be providing almost half, or a little bit more than half of that amount. Of note, there are a couple options potentially for funding this project, perhaps leasing possibilities, or a software as a service model that would allow Baltimore City to be able to fund the project over multiple years, instead of having one lump sum payment as a kind of capital project of 1 year. Therefore, Department of Legislative Services recommends that the grant funding be deleted, given the possibility for those other options for Baltimore City to include the funding in its operating budget.
Okay.
Personnel data on page 9, there's no change, and basically no change in the complement there. Key observations start on page 10. I'll direct your attention to page 11, which is Exhibit 4. This talks about the Maryland Zoological Society, zoo attendance by visitor group. A couple things to note here. The zoo's attendance has not recaptured that pre-pandemic level yet. And some concern that the general public attendance is really not coming back the way we'd like it to see it come back. We're seeing a very strong membership base, which is good. From year to year, that membership base does carry quite a bit of the attendance numbers. It also reflects the idea that perhaps maybe expand the membership base even more. But really, we'd like to have the Zoo, Maryland Zoological Society comment on the plans for reversing the decline in general public attendance. And then moving now to the next item here, we have the Maryland Zoo audited consolidated financial statements on page 13. So the information here comes from the annual report provided, and there's around a $3.4 million difference. Revenues increased over expenditures, so for fiscal 2025, which is obviously a good sign. And then on page 14, Exhibit 6 reflects the contributions from state and local governments versus total revenues. Just DLS would like to point out that there is around 44% of the costs, the operating revenues for the zoo is coming from state government operating and capital funding, which is rather high. It means that there's a rather consolidated or concentrated funding need from the state for this particular purpose. And this is something we've commented on for a number of years. It's also in the audited financial statements. Then on page 15, DLS recommends the continuation of the submission of the financial statements and quarterly attendance reports by the zoo, which is very helpful for this analysis and for understanding of the zoo's operations. Page 15, the review of erroneous convictions is observation number 2. So the Board of Public Works is authorized by statute to award compensation to individuals who have been erroneously convicted, sentenced, and confined under 2 circumstances. 1, they've received a pardon from the governor, or an administrative law judge finds that they've proven beyond clear and convincing evidence, by clear and convincing evidence, that they've met certain requirements specified in statute. I'd like to point your attention to page 16, the middle there. Most recently, in terms of the activity, legislative activity concerning erroneous convicted individual payments, Chapter 604 of 2025, so it's the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act, did require that local governments provide half, going forward from fiscal 26 onward, provide half of the costs for those payments for individuals who are convicted in their jurisdictions. So sharing the cost burden there. Board of Public Works indicates that the Comico County's share of fiscal 2026 payments is around $286,000, and that no other counties have been required to make payments at this point. That money will be received in the state's general fund, hopefully at the end of fiscal 2026. The committee narrative on last year's Joint Chairman's report requested information about the individuals or the required payments to erroneously confined individuals, and kind of about the statistics to understand how forecasting could work a little bit better. Page 17, Exhibit 7 reflects the information there. Basic idea is that the annual average of eligible with benefits individuals is around 3 per year over the time period shown, and then the not eligible is about 2 per year, so about equal for those 2 categories. We're estimating around 4 people per year, just to be conservative, in terms of those payments looking forward. Exhibit 8 on page 19 reflects the erroneous conviction spending forecast, rather high in fiscal 26, but looks like there's sufficient funding in the agency's appropriation to cover those payments, and then also in the dedicated purpose account. And then certainly in fiscal 2027, the appropriation is sufficient to cover the expected rewards or awards made. One thing to note here, the orange part of the graph shows the approved amounts going back to 2020 or so. So in those years, 5, 6, 7 years of payments were being made. So there's a long tail in terms of those payments.
Were there more?
There were more earlier on.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
And then there were also supplemental payments made for people as well. And then there were kind of payments that were made for housing purposes as well. So there are a bunch of different kind of actions back in the past. So we're not seeing as many of those actions, and that tail is basically kind of being completed. Now we're looking forward, we're thinking maybe around 4 people per year would receive payments, and therefore we'd see a much lower level of overall funding required. Then on page 20 are the recommended actions. The first recommended action there is to delete the $8 million in general funds for the Baltimore City computer-aided dispatch system. And the second recommended action is for the Maryland Zoo operational reporting requirement for the audited financials and quarterly attendance. Unless there are any questions, that concludes the presentation.
Nice job. Thank you. Senator Bailey, comments? Okay. Welcome.
Thank you and good afternoon, Madam Chair, Senator Bailey, Chair Gazzoni. I am John Gontram on behalf of the Board of Public Works. I want to start by thanking Mr. Gray again for being so great to work with this year during
Can
the
you
budget.
move that microphone up a little closer?
Absolutely,
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Let's start by thanking Mr. Gray again for being so terrific to work with during the budget process again this year. Once again, this year's Board of Public Works budget can be separated into two categories. The first category considers pass-through funds. That category includes grants to named grantees in the operating budget bill. And we have a number of representatives from those organizations here today, Madam Chair, who I know would like to offer hopefully a brief word of thanks along with a little bit of information about the great work those organizations intend to do with the FY27 grant funds. That first category of pass-through funding also includes the board's contingent fund and payments to erroneously incarcerated individuals under State Financial Procurement 10501. As Mr. Gray noted, that category pass-through funds this year is 94% of the board's FY27 budget request. The second category of funding is operational funds. As Mr. Gray also said, that's mostly personnel funds. Madam Chair, I'm happy to take questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have a whole list of people to testify this afternoon, and since there are so many, if you wouldn't mind, we're going to do the 2-minute rule. So the first group that I have coming forward would be Todd Lodgson from the city of Frostburg, Richard Reinhardt from Percy Public Affairs, Raymond Morris from Cumberland, Kirby Fowler from the Maryland Zoo, and Karen Brown from Historic Annapolis.
You want to start it off?
Sure.
Madam Chair.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Great to see you.
Nice to see you.
Mr. Chairman, always a pleasure. Senator Bailey, nice to see you as well. For the record, Richard Reinhardt with Percy Public Affairs, representing the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. I apologize. The executive director, who's always usually here to see you, is out of town for a conference, but he has submitted written testimony and certainly appreciates the opportunity. And we'll also just to have a moment to express our appreciation to the governor and also to the executive secretary, John Gontram, for all our continued support and work over the years. It truly is an amazing experience to hear about the wonderful things that the Scenic Railroad has been doing, not only under the leadership of Wes, but his entire team. And I want to note a few of those points in a second, but essentially through the continued education, preservation, restoration operations, the Scenic Railroad serves as a foundation for tourism, hospitality, and commerce, not only in Western Maryland, but across the entire state. They continue to provide record-breaking revenues, increased leadership, and continues to expand their cultivation with direct and indirect relationships with the supporting economic drivers in Cumberland and outside of Cumberland as well. And I just want to make a point of just saying a few things on what they were able to achieve this past year. For the third year in a row, they were honored as the Allegheny County's #1 tourism attraction. They are the first scenic railroad in the nation to become autism certified, which is providing opportunities for folks in that community to enjoy the ridership and experience the railroad. They're looking to expand their efforts with disability training to help serve to make sure that the guests feel safe and feel included. They had over 35,000 guests tour and enjoy the Polar Express this year. They had 85,000 riders this year. So in a time where we're seeing fiscal constraints with our budgets, you're actually seeing more people enjoy the experience, and therefore we greatly appreciate your support this year again.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I am Ray Morris. I'm the mayor of Cumberland and also the vice president of the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad Board. And I just want to thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you all today. And more than anything, I want to thank you for your support in the past and hope it continues going forward. You know, as Rich said, the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad is a vital part of tourism in Allegheny County. It is the premier attraction for Allegheny County. You know, and I think if you really look at all that it has done by bringing the over 85,000 riders to the city of Cumberland, what it has done for our downtown redevelopment has been absolutely phenomenal over the last couple of years. So we truly appreciate that. You know, and when we talk about the Polar Express, you know, as I do this, I always invite you to come up, you know.
And I have a granddaughter that nags me every year to go up there, and I haven't gotten her there yet, so I will get her up there.
I will absolutely get in touch with Rich or whoever, and we will get that set up. But understand, For those of you who don't have young grandchildren or children, we also have dinner trains, murder mystery trains, lots of different themed trains, and we would love to have you. And you can even come right now because we are operating throughout this all. I heard somebody said they couldn't make it here because of snow. We out in Allegheny County are going, what? It's Monday.
I'm an old Buffalo girl. I get through the snow too.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have any issue with it whatsoever. But anyway, thank you so much for all that you have done for us in the past, and we appreciate your ongoing support.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair and Senators, thank you. My name is Todd Logston, Mayor of the City of Frostburg. I'm also a member at large of the Board for the Scenic Railroad. I just want to echo the comments of my two colleagues and thank you for the support that you've given us in the past in seeing the value that the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad brings to the economy, but also to historic preservation in the area, and also recognizing the secondary and even tertiary economic benefits that it has to other businesses in the community and the way that we've been able to pass that down the line. Just thank you for what you've done in the past, and we would really appreciate your consideration going forward and continuing to see the value in this investment and what it brings to Western Maryland. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kirby Fowler. I'm President and CEO of the Maryland Zoo. First of all, I want to thank the General Assembly for your support in the past. It's been critical to our operations, but we are excited to be celebrating our 150th anniversary. We're the third oldest zoo in the country. We have a lot of celebrations this year. Also, we're unveiling a red panda habitat. It's the first new species, new habitat combination in decades at the zoo, and we believe that'll help to attract more attendance. A couple of things with response to the report. Thank you, Mr. Gray, for your report. With regard to attendance, actually, in 2022 and 2023, we exceeded the pre-pandemic levels, but then three things happened. We had a major parking lot reconstruction project in our front yard. We also have had to deal with economic anxieties because discretionary income is of concern to many people. And finally, weather. We're 90% of our zoo is outdoors. The last 2 Julys have been the worst Julys in 15 years. Look at the winter right now. No one's at the zoo today, even though the animals are there. So we're turning that around. With regard to revenue, in the 6 years I've been there, we've increased revenue by 25% or $4 million, while the dependence on the state has gone down by 10%. It was 55% when I arrived, and it's now down to 44% dependency. So we're heading in a good direction in both respects. Just want to thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Madam Chair King, Chair Gazzone, and excuse me, Senator Bailey, for giving me an opportunity to say a few words. My name is Karen Timer Brown, and I'm the President and CEO of Historic Annapolis. As you know, Historic Annapolis is proud of our long-standing public-private partnership with the state of Maryland that spans over 5 decades. We serve as your strong partner in the care and public presentation of a dozen state properties, most of which are over 200 years old, and more than 40,000 square feet of buildings and 2 acres of green space in the heart of Annapolis' historic district. We are really hitting our stride, and our partnership grows every year. We educate over 200,000 visitors annually from over 30 different countries, and we welcome thousands of school children on field trips. Last year, in fact, our visitation for field trips grew over 20%, and it's continuing to grow. Our programs are also growing, and recently we welcomed a record-setting number of visitors at our annual Colonial Yuletide celebration. This year, we're thrilled to partner with the state to employ 2 service year members, Julia Cotronio and Sam Garavito, both of whom are here with us today. I'm very grateful for the funding being brought forward for Historic Annapolis, and we request your support of the allocation. This funding is critical for us to care for state property, to share these state assets with the public, and to inspire connections with our history. Activating these historic sites as museums support Maryland's economy through heritage tourism, that's something that we've been talking about a lot this afternoon, and builds community as spaces where we strive to make all those feel welcome and engaged. And we leverage state funding dollar for dollar through private philanthropy and revenue raised by Historic Annapolis that's invested in these state properties. We're responsible administrators of state and public dollars. It is our mission to preserve and share treasures like the William Paca House and Garden with the public. And as we celebrate the year's 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration, we're working with local and regional partners to place Annapolis on a national stage, amplifying Maryland's capital city as a national treasure. You are most welcome to come visit us at any time. We'd be delighted to share our work with you. I'd like to thank you for your consideration and thank John Gontram for his continual support of Historic Annapolis and Andrew Gray for his thoughtful analysis. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. You know, these field trips that kids get to go on, there are a lot of kids that most of those places they've been to already. Yeah. But we have an awful lot of kids, I know in my own area, that never get to experience any of those things. And this is their chance to be able to do it. So Senator Bailey and I talk a lot about too much testing, and we thought we had that figured out, but they went around us. So I would sure like to see less testing and more field trips for kids, because they just need to be able to experience all of those things.
Agreed.
So, thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Nancy Hines, Casey Wetzel, John Gontram, Reverend Alvin Hathaway, and Wesley Hines.
Madam Chair, he couldn't make it.
Wesley Hines?
Oh, I'm sorry, Wes Hines.
Okay,
No
all
problem.
right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, then we also have Michelle Cawadio. You want to come up at the same time? Or not? Thank you, go ahead.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay, so my name is Nancy Hines. I'm the CEO of the Signal 13 Foundation. For those of you who do not know, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you. Thank you, Senators. For those of you who don't know, Signal 13 Foundation supports Baltimore City Police, financial hardship grants if they get injured in the line of duty, have a family emergency, and we give college scholarships to their children. Since 2015, Signal 13 has been able to provide over almost $2 million in support. And in 2025, looking back to the year since I was here the last time, in 2025, we gave over $100,000 in grant support and $250,000 in scholarship support. And that is only possible because of the support and the $250,000 operating grant you give to us. So thank you very much. The past 12 months, we have had more grant requests than I've ever received in all my 6 years here. I don't know why. You close one case, 2 more come in. Just pointing out the extreme cases, a police officer who's suffering from PTSD. We had a police officer who was so distraught she had a sewage emergency in her home, and a police officer or a civilian who had a house fire and lost everything, including 2 pets. So in addition to that, in 2025, for the first time ever, we co-hosted an award ceremony for police officers recognizing outstanding service. And I'm happy to say I was here last year talking about a new payroll deduction program that we implemented in the police department. Makes it easier for these officers to give back to the organization that does so much for them. And in the past 9 months, we've had a 214% increase in participation. And that is important because they are the beneficiaries of what we do, and they are giving back to Signal 13. I have 2 officers who are severely injured helping me. So we're very proud of that. Thank you for your support.
Madam Chair, Chair Gazzoni, Senator Bailey, it's good to see you. Thank you for your time. My name is Casey Wetzel. I'm Vice President of Programs at the Chesapeake Bay Trust, a nonprofit community-based grant-making organization established by you all, the General Assembly, in the mid-'80s. Originally, our grants were made mainly from the Chesapeake Bay vehicle license plate revenue and a tax checkoff. But over the past 20 years, because we're so cost effective, we have been asked to manage other types of money for other entities as well. Some of the sources of revenue we manage are under your purview and are included in the budget before you today. We're here today to just make sure you know the value of the programs supported by these sources of revenue and that it supports community-based groups in your jurisdictions, that it passes through us. The first program is for urban underserved communities, the Urban Trees Grant Program, which was established through the Tree Solutions Now Act as part of the 5 Million Tree Initiative. Urban trees are essential infrastructure in our eyes. They help mitigate impacts of climate change, cool neighborhoods, reduce heat island effect, improve human health, and many more economic and environmental benefits. The second pot of funds is for the very popular Thomas V. Mike Miller Jr. Chesapeake Conservation and Climate Corps, which was created in 2010 by Senate President Miller, then bolstered in the Climate Solutions Now Act. This workforce development program is so popular that we always receive 2 to 3 times as many applications as funding available. The program places 50 young adults each year in a stipend-supported term of service, and we now also are working with the Department of Service and Civic Innovation as the climate option under the service year umbrella, allowing us to place an additional 30 young adults through the program each year. We're very proud of these incredibly important programs, and we thank you and Executive Secretary John Gontram and Andrew Gray for your analysis. And thank you just so much for your time and all you all do for the state of Maryland. Thank you.
She didn't use all her time. Can I grab? I'm a Baptist minister. I could use those 11 seconds. Madam Chair, Brother Chair, and honorable members of the committee, my name is Reverend Al Hathaway. I'm so honored to be the custodian of the Justice Thurgood Marshall Center in Baltimore, Maryland. I believe that Justice Thurgood Marshall should be to Baltimore as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King is to Atlanta. And if we understand what has happened in Atlanta, they have so utilized that legacy as a tourist attraction. And so we took that model and we have introduced for our federal legislation, fellow delegation legislation, to have the Justice Thurgood Marshall Center be known as the Justice Thurgood Marshall National Historic Site Establishment Act of 2025. And that was introduced in February of this year. And in fact, this Wednesday, it is listed on the Senate Senate Energy and Natural Resource Committee on its agenda for hearing this Wednesday. We anticipate that it will pass through the 119th Congress. That will be significant because that would then mean that the National Park Service will have 3 national sites in the Baltimore area: Fort McHenry, Hampton Plantation, and now PS 103, which would be the Justice Thurgood Marshall site. The importance of that is that this community severely is underserved, and it needs every resource possible to strengthen it. And we believe that through amplifying the legacy of Justice Thurgood Marshall, we can bring resources to that community. We've demonstrated that. You see that in our report in terms of the number of people that have been engaged, the activities that we've done. But more importantly, we are developing ancillary properties that are significant. This May, we're going to open up the Juanita Jackson Mitchell Law Office. She was a companion of Thurgood Marshall. That is just a block away. That involved a $2 million, $3 million investment by the federal government, and that's going to house a site for legal services for persons who are victims of violence. Can I get those 11 seconds? 2 more things. We are restoring the home of Clarence and Juanita Mitchell, which is a block away, and we're restoring the home of John Murphy, Carl Murphy, who were the founders of the Afro. All that is within a block square area. That is by the support that you've given that's allowed us to leverage those things.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else here that wanted to testify on this one? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next we have the Board of Public Works. Andrew Gray is our analyst. Yeah, as I was saying, Maryland Stadium Authority. Patrick Frank is our analyst. And Michael Friends, Executive Director, and Craig A. Thompson, Board Chair, are with us. And whoever else you'd like to bring along.
Yes, the Maryland Stadium Authority budget is discussed now. I'm Patrick Frank, the analyst. The Stadium Authority was established for constructing stadia, also for, it's been expanded its mission for public school construction and the Pimlico renovations. There's also some work being done in the Maryland, or the major sports and economic, major sports entertainment, the major sports entertainment event program fund. As you can see on page 1, there's the bar charts that shows the different fund spending that we have in ours. The largest fund sources are the yellow, which is special fund, and most of that is debt service on the bonds that have been issued to support the bonds that the Stadium Authority issues. The red is the non-budgeted funds, which are the construction work that happens in a lot of other kinds of activities that the Stadium Authority participates in. On page 2 is a pie chart that shows the distribution of the various funds. As you can see, once again, a large section is special funds. A lot of that is for debt service. There's also a lot of non-budgeted funds for the supplemental school loan. That's also called Built to Learn. That is, those are basically using the proceeds that have from the bonds that are issued to build the schools. There is also some funding for the Race and Community Development program, and that is the Pimlico renovation, and that once again is the non-budgeted is going to be the funds that are used from the proceeds for the construction of the work. There are also some general funds that support the Baltimore City Convention Center, the Ocean City Convention Center, and some bonds sold by in Hagerstown to support their stadium. Pages 3 and 4 and 5 have the same information that the pie chart has, just in more details where you can actually see the numbers for it. Pages 5 through 8 then have some lot more descriptions about the specific items that are in this budget, and I won't go over all of that right now, but it is there so that you have the details if you want to go more into the spending that is in this agency's budget. Page 8 is the first issue that has to do with the lottery bond coverage ratios. The point of this issue is, first of all, it's the state's goal, I'm sure the Stadium Authority's, DLS's as well, for us to minimize costs in the state budget. One of the ways to do that is to have the best bond rating and to have very clear goals and financial targets for the bonds that we sell. The Stadium Authority has a target that for lottery bonds, there's a coverage ratio of 3 times the money that goes into it is greater than the money that's distributed out of it. And I'll explain what that means exactly more precisely. Specifically, as you know, the lottery collects funds. What it does then with the money it collects is the first share of that money goes to the prizes, to the commissions, and operation of the state lottery agency. After that, there are some distributions that are made. Those distributions then support various specific programs. Obviously, one of them is the debt service for the bonds. And finally, after the distributions are taken out of, the rest of the funds are deposited into the general fund. The coverage ratio here is those distributions should be, or excuse me, let me rephrase, the general funds that go into the state receives should be at least 3 times of the distributions. And if you go to page 9, exhibit number 3, the chart shows you 2 things. First of all, what are the distributions? And secondly, what is the ratio? That is the coverage ratio, that is the target. The red and the blue, the difference between the two are the blue are the high priority kinds of distributions like debt service costs. The red are other distributions. The red line is the line that's important. What that shows is what the ratio is. As you can see in 2027 and 2028, this is about 3.1 times the distributions. So the issue here is that the state is getting very close to these ratios, and additional costs and distributions could push the state below the ratios, and the concern has been raised by rating agencies and bond counsel and financial advisors and things like that, that this is an important target, and the state should stay within the levels that it wants to stay within. There's also a comment on page 9. Montgomery County is about to issue some bonds for the use in which they're using some of the distributions that they are getting. And so just a point of information for the committee. This is going to be happening in February, so that you're aware of that. That's the first observation. Second has to do with the Pimlico renovation. Bonds were issued recently in December. The state is authorized to issue up to, I think, $400 million for this. The first issuance, which was about $280 million, was issued. That pays $17 million worth of debt service annually. In order to go to the full $400 million issuance, DLS anticipates another $12 million a year is needed in debt service. That could be a little more if interest rates are higher than we anticipate. One of the issues recently that's come up is that there is a component of this which is a training facility that is needed in order to support Pimlico. The state bought in May of 2025 the Shamrock Farm for $4.5 million. This was in Carroll County. It's a particularly hilly area. There are some concerns about the cost that it would take to develop it. There's also now a pivot that is being considered to use Laurel Park as the training facility instead of this facility. So we have a number of questions on page 11. About what that would look like, this pivot. I mean, what is the scope of the renovation at Laurel Park? I mean, what are the costs going to be? There was some information suggesting that additional bonds would be sold in addition to these bonds. Is that, I mean, what is that being considered? What would that look like? What would the revenues be for that? What would that support? And I guess what happens with Shamrock Farm, the property that was bought afterwards. And so another issue that's come up is from the audit is that there is, this is a bit, maybe a bit in the Medco world right now, but there's because Medco operates horse racing now, but there is no long-term operating agreement between the state and the operators. It previously was a requirement before any bills or any bonds were sold. The problem is that we've had these cost problems, and we haven't really been able as a state to maintain costs. And the position, and it's a common position of the legislative auditor, is that having this long-term agreement would be able to help manage costs. And so the DLS recommendation is if there is any legislation this year regarding the bonds, there should also be a requirement that there is a long-term operating agreement in order to protect the state's interests and costs. On page 12 is a third issue, and that has to do with the Major Sports and Entertainment Events Program Fund. The issue here is that this gets $10 million per year. This is a program that was started a few years ago when the state had a lot of money. State has less money now. This is probably the best opportunity in this agency if you're looking for cost containment in order to manage cost. Our recommendation is to go from $10 million to $5 million a year. This would help with the coverage ratio that was mentioned earlier, which is under pressure. Also, DLS notes that a lot of programs and a lot of projects here are continuously getting funds each year. We may want to, as a state, may want to consider moving them to other programs and using this as kind of an area in which newer things and other things can be tried each year and not having these large ongoing costs that are occurring every year. Our recommendation with one of them is the one that's been received the most and has been the longest is Fair Hill, and to reduce the budget by $1,750,000. Final thing I'm going to talk about on page 13 and 14 is just a summary of all of the bonds that the Stadium Authority is authorized to issue and what it and just what they're authorized, what's outstanding, and what the annual costs are to this, is just so that in one place you can see what's happening. On page 15 is the recommendation to reduce the funds for Fair Hill, and as I discussed, and also the VRFA recommendation to reduce ongoing costs here from $10 million to $5 million. Then there's an appendix that shows, mentions the Joint Chairman's report, audit findings, where there were no findings this year in the most recent audit, and a summary of costs at the end. And that concludes my presentation. I can take questions.
Nice job. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I
Who
believe
wants to start off here? Michael Friends, how many years have you been with the Stadium Authority?
17.
And you really want to retire?
Life is short.
Yes, it is. Okay, who wants to start off?
I believe our chair, Mr. Thompson, would like to speak.
I'll start, Madam Chair.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, Senator Bailey, thank you very much for your time. And Mr. Frank, thank you very much for your analysis. As mentioned, my name is Craig Thompson. I'm proud to serve as chair of the board of the Maryland Stadium Authority. And I'm happy to introduce members of our leadership team who are with us today. We have Dawn Abshire, who is our CFO, Phil Hudson, who is our Vice President of Capital Projects and Planning for the Camden Yards Complex. We have Gary McGuigan to my right, who's the Executive Vice President of our Capital Projects Development Group. We also have, I'm very proud to say, a couple of our board members who are here, who really need no introduction, but I will for the record. Joe Bryce, who is a board member.
He does need an introduction. Or something.
Then I'll say Joseph Bryce. I'll make it formal.
There you go.
And former chair, Maggie McIntosh, who is behind us.
Nobody like her.
Absolutely, absolutely. And last but certainly not least, as Madam Chair noted, want to introduce again Mike Friends, who has been Executive Director of the Maryland Stadium Authority for 17 years now, and want to, as has announced to the board and was made public today, this will be his last year as the Executive Director after 17 great years. And I just wanted to take the time and make sure that the record reflects our appreciation for his time, for his talent, and his commitment to the Maryland Stadium Authority, overseeing arguably some of the more impactful projects in the state of Maryland. We wanted to thank Mike. There's certainly more flowers to come over the next few months.
Sure will be, yes.
But wanted to sit here before this committee and offer our thanks, our congratulations on the next steps. And he's here to present and introduce the other members, or reintroduce the other members of our team. And with that, Madam Chair, unless there are any questions, I'll yield my time to Mr. Friends.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Chair Gazzoni, and Senator Bailey. First of all, I'd like to thank Craig Thompson for those kind words. Just briefly, I'm very proud of the work the team at MSA has achieved and the resulting reputation we enjoy. It's been my privilege and honor to work at MSA, serving the citizens of Maryland. Again, for the record, I'm Michael Friends, Executive Director of the Maryland Stadium Authority. I won't reintroduce the people who are here today, but they each will play a key role going forward. MSA has reviewed and received the analysis and recommendations in advance of this budget hearing. We would like to take a moment to thank Patrick Frank for his thorough and thoughtful analysis. In addition to these remarks, MSA has provided the committees an agency overview that complements the analysis and includes our written responses to the recommendations. For nearly 40 years, MSA has operated, maintained, and secured the Camden Yards Sports Complex real estate assets on behalf of the state of Maryland in a fiscally responsible manner so that these facilities increase revenues to Maryland and remain best in class in terms of safety, amenities, and fan experience. Investing in sports stadiums, particularly those owned and maintained by the state, is critically important to not only provide world-class experiences to fans, retain the professional teams, and extend the life of the facilities, but also for the safety and security of the attendees. And to that end, you're all welcome to come and see the exciting new modernization projects that have taken place at both stadiums. Phil Hudson is here in case you have any questions about those renovations. MSA is also entrusted to oversee highly visible feasibility studies and construction projects for local municipalities or state agencies upon request. These projects have historically been delivered on time and on budget through adherence to principles of good governance and commitment to diversity. We have robust procurement policies and procedures in place with an excellent record of project delivery that consistently exceeds minority business enterprise goals. In 2024, Maryland's Office of Legislative Audits conducted its fiscal compliance audit of MSA, and for the third time in a row, it contained no findings that warranted mention. This is a significant accomplishment for MSA given the increasing scope and scale of our major projects. We also effectively oversee the 21st Century School Buildings Program in Baltimore, the Baltimore Vacants Reinvestment Initiative, formerly Project CORE, redevelopment of the Pimlico Racing Facility and Training Facility, the Built to Learn Statewide School Construction Act, the HB 897, the Minor League Baseball Sports and Entertainment Facilities and Events Program, and the Prince George's County Blue Line Corridor Sports and Entertainment Facilities Program. The construction of these sports, entertainment, and education facilities not only serve as a catalyst for community revitalization, but also further economic development and tourism. Finally, MSA increases the use of sports-related facilities across Maryland to foster economic development through the Maryland Sports Commission, our Sports Tourism Division, and the Marketing Collective throughout the state, Team Maryland. The Maryland Sports Commission also administers the Youth and Amateur Sports Grant Program and Michael Aaron Bush Fund and the Major Sports and Entertainment Events Funding Program in a sound and prudent manner. As always, we look forward to successfully carrying out our mission and delivering the highly visible projects and programs these funds will support, which contribute greatly to Maryland's economic vitality and civic pride. Mr. McGuigan now will discuss issues and recommendations raised around Pimlico and Laurel renovations. Ms. Absher will discuss the issue related to lottery bond coverage ratios. And Mr. Bryce, who is the chairman of the MSA subcommittee that reviews and recommends to the board for approval the major sports and entertainment grants. So, Mr. McGuigan.
Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon, Chair King, Chair Gazzoni, Senator Bailey. I thought it'd be good if I just gave an overview of racing and the training center, which I think will answer all of Patrick's good questions. So the training facility, the MTROA selected Shamrock Farm in early 2025. The MSA was granted access to conduct its due diligence in March of the same year, March of last year. And we started that due diligence looking at the environmental, sewer, water, and talking to the state regulatory authorities about what it would take to take this bucolic, beautiful farmland and transform it into a training center. So it became clear after about 4 or 5 months of that due diligence that the costs were going to be extremely high. The minimum spend in the statute is $110 million for a training center. And around September of last year, we were coming in over $210 million. But what made that situation worse, or better, clearer as to a future path, is in October of last year, we received a letter from MDE, which created a fatal flaw in the development of that property relating to a waterway. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to get into details about that. So with that fatal flaw, the key stakeholders met about an alternative plan, and that includes Medco. And Medco reached out to the Stronach Group to talk about a Laurel acquisition. And January 20th, a couple of weeks ago, the MSA board approved a path forward, a letter of intent between the Stadium Authority, Medco, and the Stronach Group to continue negotiations to get to an acquisition agreement for Laurel Park. A couple of things that this does. So the plan when the training center was going to be at Shamrock was that Shamrock would house 800 horses and about 350 people, and Pimlico would house 400 horses and 150 people. So you have duplicative operations, but that was a site constraint as to how many fit at Shamrock. With Laurel in play, they already have 1,100 stalls on site. They have the capacity for 1,200. So Pimlico will become in what is called a ship-in model. There will be no horses and no backstretch and no workers at Pimlico, and all would be housed at Laurel. So Pimlico, and that does a couple of things. You know, you think of Pimlico as a huge site. It really isn't when you've got all these barns there. And the number one issue with the community was parking, because when we had all these barns and other infrastructure on the site, there's very limited parking, even aside from Preakness and Black-Eyed Sue's, and even on a daily basis. So this would free up about 1,000 additional parking spaces. It will reduce the operational debt for the Maryland Jockey Club of about $2.5 million for not having operations at 2 facilities at the same time. And it also allows for Laurel to be developed over time. There's no mandate for Shamrock or another place to be done before Laurel closes down as a training center in the state of Maryland. So it makes a lot of sense to us, and we're working daily with Medco in negotiations with the Stronach Group, and hopefully we'll get to an acquisition agreement within the next 30 to 45 days. Pimlico right now, demolition is complete. We are redesigning all the infrastructure and taking out the barns because of this new opportunity, which should have major savings that can be taken from Pimlico and put into the infrastructure at Laurel. And in construction, we're about getting ready to build a really big tunnel, which would be a permanent tunnel where it's pedestrian and vehicular on top of the secondary tunnel, the one that's there now. And that will be able to be used during race day. So there'd be no more of putting down the, between races, that little, I don't even know what you call it, but people walking across mud to get into the infield. You'll be able to go in and out at will when complete. We are still
Will there still be parking in people's front yards?
Oh, definitely, unfortunately. We're still on track to return the Preakness to Pimlico in 2027. The clubhouse is in the program phase, and we expect that to be complete for the Preakness of 2028. So the Preakness of 27 will be what we call an overlay event, which is very common. Temporary facilities, I don't think the public will miss much at all. In terms of budget, we have about $400 million allocated for Pimlico. The minimum spend at Pimlico is $250 million by the statute, and we have $120 million allocated for Laurel Park, all the training facility itself, which exceeds the minimum spend by $10 million. And lastly, before I turn it over to Dawn, we included a sheet on bond rates. This was actually from a report from 2022 that came to the legislature. And December of 2019, bonds at $17 million, which is the minimum spend in the current statute, would have produced $369 million in bonds. At 6%, it produces $287 million, and there's a whole bunch in between. So I'd ask if you have time to review that chart. It really tells a picture by itself. And with that, I will turn it over to our CFO, Dawn Abshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Chair Gazone, and Senator Bailey. Good afternoon. Patrick did a great job of the presentation. He also kind of stole my thunder by talking about the coverage ratio in great detail. So I'll reiterate basically what he said. MSA aims for coverage where deposits are at least 3 times the amount of statutory distributions. The rating agencies have identified this as a benchmark as a credit strength. The 3x ratio is an all-in measurement of total lottery deposits against maximum possible disbursements for all programs, not only the MSA programs. So MSA cannot unilaterally ensure that lottery revenue performance and additions to this distribution will be higher and we do keep an eye on with our financial advisor and review the coverage tables and update them periodically. Thank you. If anyone has any questions regarding.
Madam Chair, Senator Bailey, it's good to see you. Patrick, thanks for the analysis. I don't know what to read into the chairman walking out just before I was going to speak, but I think he probably had such confidence in what I was going to say that he didn't need to hear it. Yeah, it's got to be a coincidence. As Chairman Thompson mentioned at the outset, I've had the pleasure of chairing a subcommittee on the board since the inception of the Major Events Fund. And if you go back to the time of 2022, it's when we passed the bill to do the improvements to the 2 Camden Yard stadiums. There was a component, a capital construction component for minor league baseball stadiums around the state, Southern Maryland, Western Maryland, Eastern Shore. And then there was this $10 million Major Events Fund. And when you go back a ways, which I do in this stuff, there used to be a time when an opportunity came along to get Army Navy or to bring some other event here. You'd scramble around to all kinds of different departments and say, who's got $150,000? Who has this? Who has that? And so Fair Hill and the 5-Star is actually a pretty good example of how that changes once you have this fund. The fund itself is designed for major events, viewership, national and international viewership, attendance of 20,000 people or more, significant economic impact to the state. So you're talking about kind of big bang for your buck events. There is no ongoing grant for 5-Star or anyone else. You apply to the grant fund each year. And a decision is made as to whether to provide that fund or not. In the instance of 5-Star, that is it's not an MSA event. It's an event that involves a lot of grantors and partners around the state. A big deal for the Cecil County and the rural areas in the northeastern part of our state. And it takes money to put on an international event. And I can tell you, every year when it comes to us, we ask a lot of the same questions that Patrick asked about how do you get to a point of self-sufficiency? How do you get to a point where you don't need this ongoing subsidy? And we have pushed that very hard in this instance and in other instances, and we hope to get there. However, we don't want to tie our hands because you get a bid for Army Navy that's 5 years away and you can bid more than 1 year. And so you need some flexibility in how you consider the fund. Obviously, we're constantly tightening our policies. One of them is multi-year grants and other things, how we would consider them. But most importantly, I would strenuously object to the idea that the fund can be cut. And at this time, the things we're bringing here that you've been able to see, whether it's Army, Navy, the BMW Classic in Baltimore County, the 5-Star. These are big deals for Maryland economically. So we would urge you to maintain that funding. And at any time, if you'd like to discuss our process for looking at these things, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you. Sometimes we have to spend money to make money.
Yes.
Anyone else need to comment here this afternoon? Okay. Senator Bailey, any questions? I think we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I thought we had, I didn't mean to ignore you. Okay, go ahead.
All right, Madam Chair and Senator Bailey, thank you very much. My name is Mia Blom, for the record. I'm the Senior Director of Government and Community Affairs for Visit Baltimore. I'm here to speak on behalf of continued support for the Michael Aaron Bush Youth Amateur Sports Grant Program and the Major Event Fund. I want to emphasize one crucial point today. Sports tourism and major events are multi-year investments. The funding decisions that are made aren't just for one budget cycle, but they directly affect Maryland's ability to attract economic activity for years to come and to support job creation in hotel and hospitality partners across the state. At the conference level, events like CIAA, MEAC basketball tournaments are awarded 2 years in advance, often in 3-year cycles. National events such as the NCAA Championships, USA Gymnastics Championships, and the Sports ETA Symposium are awarded 3 years in advance and require early financial commitments from Maryland in order for us to remain competitive. At the youth and amateur level, the timelines are just as real. Though the Michael Aaron Bush Youth and Amateur Sports Grant Program, the state has already committed to $75,000 per year across multiple future fiscal years, supporting events scheduled between calendar years 2027 and 2030. These commitments cover major fiscal years and include events like the Jula Table Tennis, Made Hoops, Gymnastics Sports Celebration, SupernovaCon, and the Irish Dance Teachers Association of North America. These events are typically secured 1 to 2 years in advance and generate economic impact for local businesses, workforce partners, hotels, and those are done particularly during non-peak periods. To further underscore the scale of this work, Visit Baltimore is actively pursuing 22 additional events projected to generate $133.42 million in economic return to the city. This figure does not include conversations that are out there about the NFL, MLB, or other international events. These opportunities are not accidental. Visit Baltimore has dedicated sports sales professional who builds relationships daily to attract local, regional, national, and international sports. I'll end there.
Thank you very much.
Chairwoman King and Senator Bailey. My name's Chip Woodwitz. I'm representing the mayor and city council of Ocean City, Maryland. I'm testifying in support of continued funding the Michael Bush Youth and Amateur Sports Grant and opposing the proposed cuts to the Major Events Fund. In Ocean City alone, for the Youth and Amateur Sports Grant, our biggest impact was bringing in USA Field Hockey's National Indoor Festival in December 20 and 21. USA Field Hockey has previously been hesitant to return to Maryland due to a negative experience in years past. With the assistance of this grant funding, we were able to successfully bring the national governing body of field hockey in the United States back to Ocean City and the state of Maryland. This grant helped offset significant logistic costs associated with the event, including shipping of goals, boards, back nets required for the competition. This event filled hotel rooms in a critical time period in Ocean City in December, a time when hotels and the convention center typically experience low occupancy. The tournament generated an estimated economic impact of $350,000 in a single weekend. At the same time, I'm urging the General Assembly to reject the reductions proposed in the DSL budget analysis of the Major Events Fund. In Ocean City alone, we have 3 big major events, the first one being our Boardwalk Rock Festival series. It approximately has 55,000 people per day on the beach, and it's an economic impact of $143 million. Our Country's Calling is in early October. It's a 3-day country festival, and that's $233 million, while our flagship of Ocean's Calling is in late September, and that is also an economic impact of $233 million.
I might add, the analyst here has just told me there is no recommendation to reduce funding.
Thank you.
For the Bush Fund.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, Senator Bailey, my name is Matt Libber. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Soccerplex in your beloved District 15. I'm also the Legislative Chair.
Next door, I'm 39.
Sorry.
Close.
And I'm also the Legislative Chair for the Maryland Tourism Coalition, which represents the tourism industry across the state. Yes, we are aware that the Amateur Youth and Fund was not being cut. We didn't see the DLS report until Saturday, so a lot of us had to submit testimony early. And I appreciate your office allowing us to get in some last-minute stuff on that, Senator King. So thank you for that. Obviously, you've been flooded with testimony from a lot of our constituents, so I won't get too much in that, but I want to hit really on the Major Events Fund. As our friends of the MSA have noted, we're bidding on stuff well in advance. So right now, we're looking at the FIFA Women's World Cup, which is in 28. We're looking at the Rugby Men's World Cup and Women's World Cup, which is 31 and 33. We need the flexibility now with that funding to make sure we can go after those events. And while Mr. Frank, I appreciate the duty you have to try and find cost cuts and closing this budget deficit, I think cuts to this fund will actually hurt the state's revenues, not help cost savings, because that $5 million we're potentially cutting could actually mean $300 million in revenue to the state. So that money we put out there brings these events, and that's put heads in beds and food in bellies and credit cards on countertops and gas in tanks. The tax revenue alone will make up that $5 million that we're putting out there, plus a lot on top of that. So cutting this $5 million doesn't seem like that significant to what we're doing for the amount of money that we're bringing back to the state. And I think it's hard because that money doesn't come back to MSA. So when you're looking at the silo, it looks like we're saving money, but all this money comes in as tax revenue for other departments and other places, sales tax, hotel tax, gas tax, across the board. So it's important that money stays in the budget, that we can go after these major events and bring in these international competitors and international visitors, because remember, tourism money is money from somebody else's state, so it's not impacting our residents with higher taxes and fees. We're offsetting those and keeping them as low as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Now, is there anyone else that had their name on the list to testify? Okay, thank you very much. This ends our first EBA hearing of the year.